Hi, welcome to my channel, Paranormal Phoenix. A little about myself. I'm Phoenix, and I've been a paranormal investigator now for around 13 years. Um, I've had a lot of experiences and studied, researched, and been through a lot of things. Some of which I have videos and pictures and audio clips that I'd like to share with you. Others are just going to be stories. And if you're interested in anything and everything cryptozoological, extraterrestrial, and paranormal like I am, hopefully you'll enjoy some of this information I have, and hopefully you'll stick around to see more videos. But enough wasting time. Let's go ahead and jump into our first story. I'm actually going to start out with the very first paranormal encounter I ever had, or encounters, because it was a continuing occurrence. It started when I was around between 3 to 4 years old, roughly. The first encounters I had, and I would be sitting in the living room in the house I grew up in. And quick explanation of the layout of my house. You had a long living room, you had a little room off to the side, and from there it went to a dining room. Well, the dining room wasn't used as a dining room, it was used as a storage and sewing area because my mother was a seamstress. And she had a chest of drawer against the wall. Like there was a little door frame, just a regular sized door. There was a chest of drawer on the inside wall of the dining room, and then a bookcase that was sitting sideways but overlapping the door frame just a little bit. I would see out of the corner of my eye this shadow figure. It was never a full body because it was always standing like it would have been behind the dresser and the bookcase. It had its hands on the bookcase. I could see the definition of the hands on the bookcase, fingers and everything. And it was leaning around the corner like this. And it was always just staring into the living room, watching me, like I said, day or night. Wouldn't matter. It was a faint shadow in the daytime, and it was darker than the darkness of the room behind it at night. The only time I wouldn't really see it is if the light in the dining room was on, which wasn't very often at night. Needless to say, when I was 3 to 4 years old, up to maybe 5 or 6, it's pretty much scared the living bejesus out of me because it was just all of a sudden there's this big shadow person staring in at me almost all the time. Pretty unnerving. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit. This kept going till I was probably around, I want to say maybe 16, when I ended up moving out of that house. I saw shadows after that, but not to that extent. So, needless to say, at first, like I said, pretty unnerving being a kid, having a shadow staring into the room, watching you almost all the time. Well, when I was around 9 or 10 years old, my family ended up going on a vacation to Florida. And there's a city in Florida called Casadega. It is known as the psychic capital of the world. My mother, being very interested in paranormal and psychic activity, decided to go visit this city. We were down in Orlando, which isn't too far from it. She got an appointment at a psychic. We went, and being that I was as young as I wasn't allowed back. So I was sitting out in the lobby, and my mom went back and started the reading. And the psychic, at one point during the session, came out of the lobby, or came out of the back room into the lobby area. I can't remember exactly what she did. It was some sort of subtle subterfuge kind of reason to come out there. Her main intention, while she was out there, she ended up patting me on the leg just to get a reading off of me, which deals with a psychic phenomenon called psychometry, which is another story for another time. Anyway, back to the main story. She got a reading off of me and went back and started talking to my mom again. She ended up telling my mom that I had psychic abilities, that she saw a shadowy figure following me my whole life to that point, and that it was nothing to be afraid of. It was actually my grandfather, my mom's dad, who had died 34 years before I was born. And the fact that I was his only grandchild, let alone his only grandson, he was very, very protective over me. He followed me and watched me and made sure nothing bad happened to me. From that experience, that helped alleviate the fear of what I was seeing. I had already started to get over the fear a little because I was pretty much getting used to it after the past, 5 to 6 years of it happening. So when I found out it was my grandfather, that helped a lot. And then I started, wondering because, like I said, I'd never met him. He died 34 years before I was born. Um, I wondered how I was able to see him. How I was able to see that apparition, so to speak. And that really led me even further into being interested in the paranormal. Um, Around that same time frame, shortly before this trip happened, my grandmother, his wife, passed away. And a few months after she had passed away, I ended up seeing a different apparition this time. I was in the living room, ironically. Seems like that's where a lot of stuff happened. I was in the living room, sitting back in a chair. It wasn't a recliner, but it was kind of a really big, oversized chair kind of thing. I was just laying back in it, watching TV, and out of the top of my peripherals, I noticed something very strange, very out of the ordinary. It looked like smoke. I look up, and there's this about roughly 2 feet long white mist, about as thick around as, say, not quite as thick around as an empty paper towel tube, but it's a wavy line and it's undulating, like slithering like a sidewinder. So it started out to my far right and moved to almost directly in front of me by the time I was looking at it. And as I was looking at it, it just disappeared. I pretty firmly believe, just from the feeling I got inside, that it was my grandma. And shortly after this is when I ended up moving out of that house. A little bit of a side note, the house I grew up in was actually hand built by my grandfather for my grandmother when they got married. So a lot of people think that sometimes spirits are connected to not only people, but places and certain objects. I'd say, being his only grandchild, plus growing up in the house that he hand built, I'd say that had to do with a lot of that. So yeah, that's my earliest paranormal experiences all the way through. I had several more in between those time frames. I'll cover those in later videos. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you have any questions, comments, or anything like that, leave it down below. And I hope you'll check out my next video too.